taking some time to, like many of you, to process what's happened this past week in D.C. Taking some time to process and to conversate with some people in my circle. What's happened this past week, past few months, past year, past 4 years. And I've taken time to read so many news articles and so many posts on social media. I realize now that doing this live stream at this time of the morning may not be the way to reach the most people. So I'm going to have it saved and replayed on my YouTube channel, which I'll add a link in the comment section later. I came to a simple conclusion that many of you probably reached already. If you haven't, I invite you to give some thought to this. Our words matter. Whether you're an ordinary citizen in this country or a person in a position of power, I invite you at this point, if you are a family member, a friend, or follower, to unfriend yourself, to unfollow me. Now, because I will certainly unfriend you or unfollow you. If you're putting up posts that appear in my feed, that choose not to lay blame at the feet of those who have spoken words or written words that cause or promote any type of divisiveness beyond what's already built into our human spirit. I am all for freedom of expression. I'm all for respecting different people's opinions. However, if your opinions are not rooted in some type of facts that can be proven, some type of emotional banter rooted in some type of divisiveness that you've been fed into all your life, and I've been fed stuff throughout my life, I choose to ask you, please just unfollow me. Unfriend me on social media. Don't listen to my podcast, don't visit my YouTube channel, don't leave nothing there. I'm all for open comment that stimulates thinking, challenges our thinking. But I'm also for laying blame where blame lies. While many persons, because of what happened this past week, want to call out things that many of us are well aware of, that in this country there has been, since its founding, two separate justice systems. It's undeniable, except for those who choose to bury their heads in the sand, religiously or politically, or for whatever other reason. What happened in D.C., at this nation's capital, was spurred on by a narcissistic man-child, in my opinion. His words mattered. For 4 years, he was given a platform where many of us would have been taken off of similar platforms for lesser violations. It got global attention. It has global attention. People all of a sudden want to run and make changes and address people of power wanting to do X, Y, Z. People are losing their jobs behind this. Because for the first time in a long time, people who like them, white folk, evangelical type of white, I call it for what it is, the religious base, that you get down to it, is at the core of a lot of this. Political base who wants to make America great again, core of this. But into all this negativity, when we know that the greatness of America has always lied in its diversity, even in its unjust justice system, where people who look like me have fought from its inception for fair footing and may never get fair footing in my lifetime, or perhaps even yours, dear viewer. It is what it is, but the fight must continue of marginalized people. And there are no perfect politicians, and there are no perfect religious leaders, there are no perfect business leaders. This is a common thing. We know this. None of us are perfect. No systems are perfect. Yet, we choose to not lay blame at the feet of those who spoke words that led up to what happened this past week. Lay blame at those who sent militarized police out at peaceful protesters marching in the name of what I believe is the new civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, and those who side with them. But it's not all black folk that's been on the front lines. It's not all black folk that's been out there walking, watching, talking, fighting. And people of other races. Because one thing I will firmly stand my feet on, pun, symbolically, is that we as black folk have been a catalyst for change in spite of the changes that have been happening to us. And sometimes, as many of us know, we are our own worst enemy. We are a part of this country's fabric. We are woven into this country's fabric. And yet we are often attacked, pushed aside, looked differently upon. That was clearly evident this past year. Clearly evident with the march on Washington by those, I call it what it is, these naturalized terrorists. And it exposed the cracks in the fissure, allow those who no longer dressed in hooded white garb come out with badge on chest and come out with shirt and tie and corporate America. And so yes, some of them, the weaker minded ones dressed in costumes and garb and looks like men, great big children, it exposed, opened up the fissure, and these folks came out no longer with hood and white sheet and burning cross, pushing for something that should never have been pushed for. The system this time, up to this point, has worked. The election is over. Some of you may disagree with who the new president and vice president is. That's your choice. I respect that. Some of you may feel that changes will never come. I can respect that. I welcome your comments in this feed. Because at the end of the day, the real change must begin with you and I and the words we speak. It took those in power to remove that individual from the platform he's been on. But I think it's a little bit late. Someone will say, well, that's censorship, and he has the right to be there, and we have freedom of speech, and yeah. I ask you, who of you would walk into a crowded room and scream the word fire over and over again, and perhaps, just perhaps, light off some non-fire smoke type device? Who of you feels it's okay to scream fire in a crowded room? America, the world, because social media is connected, it's a giant room, y'all. Just as we send military over to other places to fight injustices of different types, and we have the good members of law enforcement, those who are there to do their job as best they can, in spite of the system being broken at different levels. In spite of, I ask who of you is scream fire in a crowded room? My heart is heavy. I read some posts. I read a post today. I got up here that said, well, this man isn't at fault. Trump isn't at fault. This one's at fault. There's nothing really to be done. That's true to a great degree. However, I lay blame at my feet and your feet. Because we have a broken system that we're able to work with and slowly bring about change. Let not it be that our ancestors from the founding of this nation who fought for basic human dignity with this broken system for 400 years have risen. And because of their fight, I and you, people of all races, are able to come here and speak words through social media and other ways that can have a positive impact, to bring about slow change so that perhaps the next generation or the next generation or the next generation will get along just a little bit better. It's been working, y'all. Slowly, it's been working. You look back historically, it's been working. Slow gains over 400 years. When blame is squarely been laid at the feet of those who caused the issues and the problems. I'm going to break for a moment and suggest 3 of the most impactful books that I read covered in the year 2020. I'm going to go in the order I received them. And they deal with religion and race. First, Unsettled Truths, the Doctrine of Discovery. Written all the way up to the modern time history. What happened recently. Get that book, y'all. I challenge you to dive into it. This one, which I've shared with people that I eventually had to block. I just had to block them. The Truth About American Churches' Complicity in Racism, the Color of Compromise. The photograph is of the church bombing in Alabama. It goes deep. Suggest you get it. It's worth the read. And the final one, a very small book, History of the Black Man. Where you see all of this we saw this past week. We've seen for the past 4 years. We can look back historically. As those books go back historically, they cross hundreds of years of history. And bring us up to our present time. That's all I would say about it. There has definitely been an even tilting of the scale of justice. Injustice is sometimes blind when it looks like her kind. Often blind when it looks like her kind. The so-called experts have dove into this thing the past few weeks, and people are running scared and they're resigning and all this stuff is happening because those who look like her kind, just been speaking justice, they felt threatened for the first time. But as we have been feeling unsafe for 400 years in this country, and fought tooth and nail for our freedoms, I'm not making this totally about race, but race plays in this. Religion plays in this. I talk heavily in my post about evangelicals, but the reality is, regardless of your interpretation of the Bible, regardless of your religious persuasion, regardless of your race, at the core of it, belief systems, words spoken by religious leaders matter. Some I've heard talk about end of times and this is going to happen and all these things that we have been fed. I challenge you to look into these things you choose to believe and see the layers of how it's actually playing out. This thing called, and regardless of what you may come out to believe, in your interpretation of text, in your interpretation of recent political events. At the end of the day, what you speak, what I speak, what I write, what you write, what we read, what we take in matters. And even though the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech and freedom of religion, it also guarantees freedom from religion. Read some of the basics of the parts of the first part of the United States Constitution for yourself. Come to know your spiritual history, your religious history. Come to a better understanding of your history. Come, and if you choose to go elsewhere and believe whatever you choose, I respect that. Because that's still the common thread that you and I cannot change regardless of how we interpret words politically or religiously. The common thread is this is that we are all human. And this is the country we live in. And as long as we have the power to vote, as long as we have the power to protest, as long as we have the power to stand, as long as we have the power to speak, as long as we have the power to fight back by means of social media or any other form, to bring about an equalizing of the equalizing. What I mean by equalizing, I mean with this, so that we all kind of reap at some degree or another the opportunities and benefits of living here. Because in spite of everything that's happening, Mona Maxine, everything that's happening, at the end of the day, it's simply what we say and choose to believe. And no one, again, has the freedom of speech to scream fire in a crowded room, and it's what's been happening for the past 4 years. The fires were stoked, and they burst up like a backdraft. That oxygen rushed into that symbolic room in D.C. and whereas last year, yes, there was some people marching, and it would be march again, because until the fight must go on for equalizing a better, improved system of justice, a better, more level playing field. But I'm going to say this, since I talked about everything else, I'm going to take it back home to me, myself, and to you, by educating yourself with information. I'll take it back home to you. And let's choose to stand hard when we must stand hard and fight for that change in our nation that we desire. This upcoming administration in Washington, like others, you can only do so much. You only do so much. At the end of the day, they must answer to those who helped them get elected. I hope they will answer more to the people. Hopefully we have at least a couple years of peaceful rhetoric, I will call it, peaceful words spoken. I hope for at least for a couple years, we ordinary people can benefit from the power of our vote. But remember this, those who marched on the Capitol are not gone nowhere. Those religious leaders who are feeding their minds, those political ideologies, those conspiracy theories are going nowhere. We have someone on our side as well. I said our side, the racial divide are used by that in our culture. But we take care of all our cultures and our sides and this side and that side. We're still human. I have grandchildren. So I haven't convinced myself that their world will be much better than what this world has been. I'm 58 years old. I've seen change. Those of you older than me catch this. I've seen change. Progress has been made across the religious and racial divide. We are set, perhaps, to, despite of the coronavirus, despite of COVID-19, to capitalize on the power of change with ourselves. And yes, say what you want to say, think what you want to think, that's your right. Don't go back to what I said before. I will not tolerate hate speech on my feed. I will not tolerate a lot of blame gaming this way, that way, unnecessarily on my feed. If the blaming is based on what's clearly evident to most people, that common sense thing is, some say, yeah, no problem. Speak the facts, share your information. I will share it again to reach those and my followers and friends and family. Because as one ancient writer once said, for lack of knowledge, the people perish. Just don't share a conspiracy theory. Our words matter. For a man who's done his own share of damage but not listening and speaking too quickly, and perhaps we'll do some more. I know the power of the words. You know the power of your words. The change you seek. Speak wisely, but listen more readily. Peace and blessings, y'all.